Miami Beach via Scotland. Aaron, you just got back from Sweden. Why don't you tell us a little bit about how you're feeling today and how the trip was?
Yeah, honestly, went to Sweden. Just a couple of 2 nights, a day and a half a day. I had a great time, and a lot of it was being able to travel for the first time the whole way without a mask. I took my 12-year-old son Maverick and spoke at a conference with a bunch of interesting people who are also like cool, nice people. This is in Malmo, Sweden, and yeah, it's like just get out and do something different. It was interesting in Europe. There's obviously an enormous upswelling of like SaaS and software and tech and all this entrepreneurial activity that will never be the same as Silicon Valley, but it doesn't have to be. Right? There's plenty in Europe, and there's such a demand for everything. And it's interesting the problems they're seeing, like so hard recruiting talent. I said, anecdotally, someone said that in Stockholm, at least, like all the Swedish engineers have been snapped up by Silicon Valley companies who have tons of money, so they can pay for, higher a dollar than local companies. They can have great engineers there, and so like that talent war, that's all global. Everyone, all the companies I'm advising or on boards of, they're all struggling with that too. Well, most of them. So I think, to me, it's great to get out to talk to people, meet people. It's that human element of getting to see people in person that's been missing for a couple of years. As my son, he had a shtick this time. He's like, "Dad, we go around and ask people, hey, Maverick, what do you think of my talk?" "Dad, it was bad. It was bad. Not funny." I mean, it wasn't bad. That's just like he thought that was funny to tell everyone. He's like, my dad fell off the stage, which I didn't. And he's kind of just had his shtick at the time. And he was a popular guy. And it was just, another reminder for me, like why I like being in Europe and so much interesting things in Europe, like the variety and different cultures. And so I'm excited to be here.
A little bit more about some of the companies you met with in Sweden. Why don't we give some shout outs? Maybe we'll tag them down below. Who'd you meet with? What cool companies?
A few, there was, I met Vesa, the CEO of Lido, right? Actually does a really cool, kind of embeds like a conversational element to websites right there. And I actually am going to use, they have a free kind of personal edition, kind of like a sales assistant, but it's almost like a chat bot for your own. Like if you took Linktree and turn it into your own chat bot, is the best way to describe it. So I'm going to use Lido. And I met Mikhail from, it's called, company called Supermetrics, and they're like a $35 million bootstrap SaaS company. Right? It's great, really interesting. And another company called Eletiv, exact pronunciation, doing like employee kind of engagement. Marcus, who's the founder. They're just like good people. And there's obviously a lot of people from Sweden, a lot of Finns. And one of the things that, especially in all these Nordic countries, a lot of people have these like summer cabins. And I saw some pictures of one. I mean, I'm so jealous. They'll have like a summer cabin on a lake or the archipelago in Finland. And maybe they only have a few months of the year they can really go there because of weather. But this balance between nature, like work and nature, has been so important in the Nordics. And yeah, I got jealous there. So many interesting companies, and you can see kind of how there's such a demand for whether it's like funding and talent and all the hunger that the Silicon Valley companies have. And this isn't just Sweden, it's all over Europe, honestly, probably over the world to some extent, but especially in Europe. Sweden has venture capital and money in the startups. And I'm sure a lot of young people, we were in a city called Malmo, which is not, so Stockholm is obviously is the capital. And, again, there's, and I think a lot of companies, they still have people generally, if I had to say, generally going to the office like 2 or 3 times, a couple of days a week, 2 or 3 days a week. Engineers, not so much. Like a lot of people say, the engineers are excited that no one has to go in the office. Salespeople still want to go in the office, and other people who kind of have jobs are used to dealing with people going into the office regularly, not 5 days a week. But Stockholm, again, if you were like a young person and you wanted to have a great city to live in, yeah, I'm sure like there's so many great capitals in Europe. Like how can you choose one? Yeah, it'd be a great option. There's a lot going on there. For me, being close to Europe, like, wow, I'm looking for, and I told people in my speech, like I'm looking for companies to work with, like as an advisor or board member in the Nordics or in Europe, because like I'm right in the UK. It's a lot more, it's interesting here, time zone friendly. And there's like it's great to see a lot of people who want to talk about that. And there's again such a, like a hunger for help. But to me, like interest, Europe has this especially interesting aspect, which is okay, the United States is always going to be the biggest kind of market. And in Europe, a lot of companies see, well, if we can make it in the United States, it's like the NBA, right? Then we can make it anywhere. But I think there's a lot of in the States, there's like uber competition, right? So that kind of you have to like fight to be the best in that. But in Europe, there's a different kind of advantage they've got. And I don't know exactly how this is going to translate to kind of companies and cultures, but I think it gives Europe an advantage they didn't really have before, which in the same way, which is like all the different languages and cultures and countries kind of mixed together, that they're all starting to like sell to each other. And with employees spread across more languages, cultures, and regions, and regulated environments. So again, it's more about, it's not even so much a hunch, but or hypothesis, but I do believe that that kind of variety of a mishmash of like employees and customers in different places is going to create a type of culture or company that is used to dealing with more complexity that way, which is going to translate to advantages that people in the United States don't have to deal with. And I'm not exactly sure how that's going to show up, but I believe it will.
It sounds like the word there is trains them to be dynamically global.
Yeah,
when you're
something
melting pot.
Yeah, something like that. Like the United States has had the whole country to some extent is a melting pot, which has created a lot of, challenges, but also advantages. And I think that's the same thing for Europe, especially, to me, the pandemic and remote work and selling has created a bit of the same situation like the euro did for currency, help equalize all these countries to kind of reduce barriers. So remote selling, buying, and employees has dropped a lot of those barriers across countries for especially buying and selling, especially buying. It's going to have a bit of the same unification effect that the euro had. And I'm really bullish on Europe. I mean, I don't know if it'll make more money, in terms of the equity values as the States, but it's definitely going to be a lot more interesting.
And people are looking for interesting now. There's a bigger value on interesting people that you work with, interesting places, interesting things you see on a daily basis. People need interesting.
Yeah, I think one thing that a lot of companies are struggling with is how do we compete for talent and retention for employees against companies who have a lot more money. And one of the things they can do is, culture, it could be values, relationships, or interestingness, which I don't know how many companies in Europe say, hey, as long as you work for us and if you have an EU visa, and I know even if you don't have an EU visa, I think you do 6 months out of the year, like we'll help you kind of swap around, like live in different hubs or countries, like live in a different capital 2 months at a time. Like there's one company I talked to where they've got maybe a few, it's not a big, I couldn't say how many employees they've got. Let's just say 200. I'm going to pick kind of a number. They weren't huge. And they've had hubs in like Stockholm, and they're building one in Malaga. And there's like a couple of capitals, they listed off a few of them. And I was like, okay, there's like a handful of hubs and capitals in different countries. And if you're an employee there, yeah, why wouldn't you if you wanted to? And you didn't have, maybe even if you did have kids, like cruise around over time and visit a bunch of different places and countries and cultures. And if you're especially at a company where you've got different people around, you kind of have built-in people to go meet and hang out with and do stuff with at those places. So I don't know, we'll see, but I do believe that there'll be these advantages that Europe has because of this that will show up. Maybe they have or will show up over time. Even I'm not sure exactly what they're going to look like.